housing crash, rising interest rates, writers' strike, Israel, Gaza, another world war, elections. What is coming in real estate in 2024? I'm Corrie Sommers, your local Los Angeles realtor. Stay tuned. I am going to give you a recap of 2023 and what I predict is coming in 2024. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel yet, take a moment to click the subscribe button and the bell below for updates, and I'll be right back. Happy 2024, everyone. Here we are in Los Angeles, and I want to share with you my personal predictions for the housing market as we go into 2024. But before we dive into that, let's recap what's happened in 2023. We had a lot of things impacting the real estate market, especially here locally in Los Angeles. Of course, nationally, interest rates rising really brought buyers to almost a screeching halt because the interest rates peaked at 8%. And even though historically that's not the high, we have been so spoiled by interest rates for 15 years below 5%. So that jump makes a huge difference when you're talking about properties that are $1 million, $800,000, 2.5, 3.5, 5 million. It really impacts that payment. Then here in Los Angeles, we had the writers' strike, and that impacted our housing market significantly. And then as the year drew to a close, we started having dips in interest rates, but we also had Israel and Gaza come to the world platform, which is just a terrible thing in and of itself, but also has really affected home buyers and sellers because sellers are nervous. What's going to happen? Are we going to end up in another world war? Well, one of the things I want to talk about is what was everyone saying was going to happen in 2023? I have to tell you, since 2017, I have heard from different agents that have been in the business for over 15 years, older, and even buyers and sellers, mostly buyers, that still cling to what happened in 2008 and 2009 and insist that the market is going to crash. Well, again, I've been hearing this since 2017. 6 years later, the market did not crash in 2023. So that being said, the thing to really remember that I've shared so many times is what's happening today in real estate is not like before. We had a market crash that was really thrusted forward by the mortgage industry versus right now we've had a recession taking place by factors that aren't related to the mortgage industry or directly with housing. Yes, our housing market really exploded during COVID. People needed a home. They needed a roof over their head. Sheltering in place took on a whole new meaning. People realized that their homes were too small to accommodate them working from home or vice versa, but there was a lot of activity. Well, truthfully, there is no crystal ball. And anyone that tells you something firmly or in absolutes, I wouldn't listen to them. Anytime I share my opinion, it's like, look, there's no crystal ball, but this is what I think is coming on. So, last year, the buyer market surged in January. I remember I had a listing that I was sitting in an open house for in Westlake Village, and it was a great property. For those of you living in Southern California, we have really small lots, and this home was on an acre. It was gated, so it had this drive, gated, small yard because this was a little bit into the hill, so the driveway went up the hill. Nice home, had been updated, pool, good sized yard, and then some hill in the back. So there were some concerns like what if there was a fire to come over that hill? And I just have to say that, when did I sit the open house? I want to say like the second or third week of January. On a Saturday, 65 people came out. On Sunday, 55 plus another 20 different groups came through in the morning and after the open house. It was wild. And of course it ended up in multiple offers. It sold for, I want to say about $150,000 over ask, which was what I told my own buyers they needed to put in to get this house. They didn't. They were nervous. We were just coming out of interest rates rising, and there was like this soft little lull for a minute, and they hesitated. And unfortunately, that hesitation cost them the home of their dream. We're still looking, so if anyone has a home in Westlake Village that they want to sell that has a pool and at least 4 bedrooms, you should reach out to me because I have a buyer. But anyways, this is kind of like the story that took place quite a bit. Now, because our market is also so heavily impacted by the entertainment business, that writer's strike really affected us. If you are searching for a home, you can register on my website to browse all the properties that are currently on the market here in Los Angeles. My website is very interactive. You can create your own fun experience. You can communicate with me through the website. You can send me a text and I will get it immediately. We can have dialogue about a property that you think is fun and exciting. We can schedule appointments and it's all free. The best part of it is it only comes to me. I never share or sell your information. You are completely protected. All you have to do is visit CorrieLuxuryHomes.com and set up your free account. Now, because this is Los Angeles and we are so heavily influenced by the entertainment industry, the writer's strike really affected us. And I've talked about this here and there in my monthly housing market reports because I've experienced this. I had a number of buyers pull back because of the writer's strike. And I'll give you an example. I had a buyer that works at the studios and, we started looking the year before last. So we started looking the end of 2022 and her needs for a home, very specific. And, there's just not a lot of homes that have everything on her checklist and she's very particular, great taste. And so that being said, it was kind of like finding the needle in the haystack, if you will. I knew it would come, but I knew it was also going to take a little bit of time, especially given her price point. If she could come up 500,000 more, she would have been right there. But the price point that we were at, it did make it a little more challenging. So the uncertainty really started to get to her when the writer's strike took place. Before that, at the beginning of the year, we were gung-ho and I had her feeling confident and we were looking at some stuff that was closed and then the writer's strike happened. And even though her job was secure, she was one of the few lucky people that were able to stay working during the strike. The longer the strike dragged out, the more uncertainty there was, the more fear set in. And she said, you know what? I'm going to rent. I'm just going to rent for a year and I'm going to call it quits. Okay, so she goes in and rents and moves. And literally 2 months later, the perfect house hit the market. And unfortunately, at that point, she wasn't in a position to buy. And I shouldn't say that she wasn't in a position to buy. The strike had her so nervous. She had just gotten settled. She felt all this relief. Now here comes the perfect property. There's still so much uncertainty because of the strike, and she just couldn't pull the trigger. And she's like, let's wait till next year. I had similar situations to this happen to me 7 or 8 times this year, to where for me, that was one of the hardest parts of 2023. It's just buyers gave up too soon or backed out because of the uncertainty in the market. So let's talk about 2024. First of all, I want to share my commitment is just as strong as it's been over the last year plus to deliver information, facts, not fiction, facts, not infotainment, facts, not clickbait, to you about our local housing market here in Los Angeles so that you can make informed decisions with facts when it comes to selling your home or buying a home as we go through 2024. Now, what does that look like? My housing market reports here, they cover market statistics such as the amount of inventory overall, how many days it takes for a home to sell, the demand, how many homes are actually in escrows, price reductions, and comparing this year to the same time last year. Now, I cover 7 different parts of the city of Los Angeles in the San Fernando Valley and the LA Basin so that you get a good grasp of things. And of course, if you watch my videos and you're saying, hey, what about this area? I have a home over here. I'll just throw out an area. Porter Ranch. You don't mention Porter Ranch. I'm thinking about selling. Just reach out to me. We can have those one-on-ones. Same is true if you're living over in Ladera Heights. And yeah, that's not an area that I cover in my monthly market report, but it is an area that I'm familiar with and I sell and I can absolutely happily help you. It's very interesting. I had a client say to me, I'm selling their house, and they said, hey, so I think I want to shift my search from, these areas to a Beverly Hills condo. I'm going to call a Beverly Hills agent. Wait a minute. I've worked in Beverly Hills. I've shown condos in Beverly Hills. I've shown houses in Beverly Hills. I have clients in Beverly Hills. Why do you need to switch? Oh, well, I just thought they would know it better. Let me show you. So I sent them a full breakdown on every condo building in Beverly Hills that had concierge service, a pool, a gym, everything, because it's not about the agent living exactly where you're looking. It's about how well they know it. Anyways, I digress. So let's talk about what are some of the best and worst case scenarios for 2024. First of all, I'm going to start by saying my overall feeling of 2024 is that interest rates will tick down. They've already been ticking down. Interest rates had peaked at about 8% and now they're in the 6s. If everything goes according to what experts are predicting, we might at some point in 2024 get to the 5s again, which would be phenomenal. But there's several things that come with that. First of all, every buyer that has waited is going to jump right back in the market. But the thing about interest rates that I really hope to clarify, and I'm going to try to keep this simple. I could get into the bonds and the index and how this affects this and that, but I feel like when I start talking like that, people your eyes roll into the back of your head and start looking at something else. So what I'm going to keep really, really simple, which is this. The Fed lowering the interest rate, the Fed rate, is not the same as a mortgage rate. One of the reasons that mortgage interest rates have gone up so much is that when the Fed was trying to hedge inflation by raising interest rates overall, the mortgage industry reacted. Now, what most people don't realize is when you get a home loan and you get a mortgage, those loans are packaged and sold. And they're sold to service providers. They're sold as part of hedge funds. They are sold. And so to make sure that they were sellable and that they weren't having such a low interest rate that someone would not want to purchase these loans, they were raising the interest rates very aggressively. And that was basically to keep their business model going, right, if you will. Now that Fed rates dropping, will our interest rates drop? Yes, we've seen them tick down, but if you're waiting for a 4% or a 3.5 or 2.7, I don't see it going there. I don't see those days coming back. We will be very lucky if we get into the 5s. But again, if you're waiting for that lower interest rate, you need to understand you will have far more competition. And if this happens too quickly, meaning if the inventory is still limited and then interest rates really come down and there's a flood of new buyers in the market, what we saw during the pandemic will happen again, meaning that there will be more competition, more multiple offers, more driving up the home prices because of that competition to secure a home, because money will be a little cheaper. People will be able to be a little more aggressive with how much over asking they're offering. So some things to keep in mind. What do I think are like the best and worst case scenarios for 2024? Well, lowering interest rates will definitely encourage home sellers to sell and increase the number of buyers in the market. It really has to be a delicate balance. I do believe that if more baby boomers continue to downsize, this will address at least an increase of about 25 to 30%, but that inventory will definitely be eaten up by home buyers. And something that you also have to think about, if people are downsizing, selling their home for a condo or just smaller square footage, that means those properties need to be available on the market as well. Worst case scenarios, the availability of homes, the inventory continues to decline. More buyers jump into the market because of lowered interest rates, and we're back in a COVID type of frenzy, which will drive prices up more and more and more. And this will cause people to put home buying, it'll set them back years. Here's what I want to say about that though, and I share this with my clients. Sometimes you have to make the sacrifice now to get to your goal later. And what do I mean by that? I think in today's modern society, we all want what we want now. There's something to be said for stepping up. It works. It is how people have gained more equity, more wealth by living in a home that's at a mortgage price they can afford, and then in 3 to 5 years selling and getting something larger, increasing till by the time they're have a full family, they're able to buy that multi-million-dollar home here in Los Angeles that's new construction that everybody wants, right? Or they bought their home 20 years ago, raised their family, are now selling it as part of their retirement, and are able to buy the next property cash free and have money, buy the next property cash and have money to utilize for the rest of their retirement. Now, I want to share with you a couple of articles that I saw, because I'm seeing a trend where everyone's kind of saying some similar things, which is, I almost want to say abnormal, because usually I completely disagree with everybody's clickbait, if you will. But it seems that people are getting more realistic because the market hasn't crashed. So Bankrate is, saying the raw facts. There's just simply not enough homes for sale. And as long as the economy continues to just like motor along, the new higher rates are probably here to stay. Well, I do believe that those are going to come down a bit. But will housing prices drop? It's interesting that Bankrate said no, probably not, which is something that I've said to my clients all the time too. I don't see it dropping. And when people say that the prices of homes have dropped, you have to really take that into context, right? I just had this conversation earlier this morning where someone said, oh, the prices dropped this year. I'm like, no, the prices continue to go up, but they went up at a slower rate of appreciation. So they weren't coming on the market as high as they were before, but that doesn't mean that the prices drop. Like the home that's on the market today at $3 million would have come on the market last year at 2.8. It didn't drop to 2.5. It still came on the market at $3 million. So all things are relative. Bankrate's opinion about what type of market this will be, they still feel that the tight inventory keeps it in a seller's market. I completely agree with that. Forbes. I like reading Forbes articles because usually their writers are a little more astute. They definitely think that affordability is going to be a challenge in 2024. And I do think that there's something to be said for that, especially for first-time home buyers. I mean, this is a tough time in historic real estate to be buying a home for the first time. Prices are not cheap. Pent-up demand and low inventory is going to continue to drive those prices higher, especially if that interest rates drop and we get a flood of people. And we just don't have enough supply. What's interesting with Forbes, they covered, will the market crash? And they said, despite price declining in some areas, they don't think the market's likely to crash, which I completely agree with. And will foreclosures increase? Well, here's the thing. I can't speak to every part of the country, but at least here in Los Angeles, most people have so much equity in your home, we're not seeing a flood of foreclosures. But is there a chance that that can happen? I had a conversation with a homeowner just 3 weeks ago that, called me and said, hey, look, Corrie, I'm trying to figure out what to do. Work has been difficult. Started getting behind last year and then the writer's strike, case in point to my story earlier. And I'm in a little bit of trouble and I have a couple liens on my home and I'm trying to figure out if I should refinance or if I should just sell the home. So I first said, okay, you need all your facts. So we pulled his title. We saw exactly what liens. I sent him that so he can address those and verify and work out what he's got to work out, find out how much he really needs to pay off everything. Connected him to an amazing lender because when he did buy this home, he worked with a different lender so he could go over what those options are and did an assessment on his current property's value to see if it even makes sense. Because, when he bought the home, he put down a couple $100,000. Where is his appreciation at? Is there enough spread to sell the home, pay off the debt, and buy a new one? And these are things that you need to really think about when you've got a little bit of hard times behind you and you're trying to make the next step forward. I also, Forbes didn't really discuss this. Well, they touched on it a little bit about baby boomers, but as I mentioned earlier, I do believe more baby boomers are going to be entering the market over the next 5 years. A home that I've had on the market, the homeowners are baby boomers and they're looking at, okay, we want to sell this and move into our next forever. This is where we're going to be the remaining years we have left on this earth. This is where we're going to be when we are, not able to move around and maybe need hospice care. We're not going to go into a facility. We're going to have someone come to home. This is where we're going to be. And so what that looks like for them is something that, well, actually, I like what it looks like for them because they have a really great plan, but it's something that's different for everybody. But the reality is baby boomers, while they were not the best at planning for retirement, I mean, there's statistic numbers that show 3 out of 4 baby boomers will run out of money in retirement. But what boomers did good was home buying. And so most baby boomers have equity in their home. And so unfortunately, for people that didn't want to sell their home, that's something that they have to start looking at, is selling the home, taking that money, buying the next place to downsize, and expanding what they've been able to plan for retirement to make it stretch. And hopefully, for those that did it very well, enjoy their lifestyle. I know this is a conversation I even have with my mom, like, what's our next step so that we can get her in a place where she doesn't have to be in a very cold state with all the snow and all the that brings, where she can enjoy living here in Southern California during the winters and then going back there during the summers. So it's there's a thing to that. And coming from the East Coast, you know, to all my folks watching this that are in New York, Massachusetts, in the New England states, you know that most people in retirement sell the home, buy something smaller, and then buy something down in Florida and do the snowbird lifestyle, right? Warm weather in the winters, back up for the summer. So there's something to be said to that. So I just really think that, again, nobody has a crystal ball, but I do, unfortunately, I don't see a huge increase in inventory coming in 2024. I do see that if interest rates get down to those 5s, it's going to be more buyer frenzy, more competition. You know, the only thing that I can say is if you're trying to decide whether you should sell and what your next step should be, don't be worried about, you know, the political global landscape. We are going into an election year that is going to definitely affect things. It's going to affect our news. It's going to affect stories. It's just going to affect things overall. But typically when it comes to election years, every candidate wants things to get better. And usually when it comes to real estate and election years, things improve a bit. So there's always some hope for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope my opinion was helpful. You know, don't just go by my opinion. Read a couple of articles. But again, I just want to defer you to watch my monthly Los Angeles housing market reports, because I'm giving you facts, and there's a whole playlist that you can go back and watch the prior months, and you can really see what's going on the more you watch and listen, and the more I review that information with you. And on that note, we'll have a housing market report up soon. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel yet, please take a moment to click the subscribe button and do so. I'll see you next time.